Well, hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us for this week's panel conversation. My name is Matt Fulton. I'm the Vice President for National Engagement with a company called Polco. Polco is a company that it helps communities build stronger engagement and track performance from a resident's perspective. And we have designed these panel conversations to get perspectives and ideas and creative solutions from leaders in government so that you can learn. We really would hope that you can pick up a new perspective, pick up a new idea that might work in your community, something that you'll find valuable in your daily life. It's always good to hear from others who are doing things successfully, and having the opportunity to talk to leaders like today's panelists is a great way to be able to accomplish it. So thanks for being here. Here's the format of the discussion today. I'll do a quick introduction of our panelists, and then we'll jump into some questions for the panelists. The overall session takes about an hour, and we'll try to manage it to make sure that we fall within that time frame. If there's any questions, they'll probably wait until the very end of the question period, and then we will wrap things up. So if that sounds okay, I'd love to jump in and introduce the panelists that we have for today. It's a great panel. With a unique little twist, which I'm really happy about. I'm really happy to introduce our first panelist, Dale Shafer, who's been in municipal government since 1979. She started out working in a special district in Eastern Oregon. And she's had a variety of roles during her career, and it sounds like a handful of great challenges. She mentioned in her biography that she has actually been in a situation where they were so financially strapped that she had to go out for loans in order to make payroll. And so really can appreciate the challenges that presented to you, Dale. But she's had really interesting roles as a city recorder, a treasurer, even as a municipal judge, which is a little bit unique for managers. And so really glad that she's here. She's currently serving as city manager in Nehalem, and has found the community and her role very rewarding. She has served on the board of directors for the Oregon City County Managers Association, and the board of directors of the Oregon Association of Municipal Recorders, as well as the judge pro temp for the city of Cannon Beach. She's a recognized leader in her profession, and what is great about Dale is that she's planning to retire at the end of June. So congratulations, Dale, on your long and rewarding career. I'm also happy to hear that public life runs in your family, and your son is a county commissioner in Oregon. So congratulations on that. Dale, would you mind just adding a little bit more to your background for us?
Well, I grew up in Arizona, went to Arizona State, got married, and we moved to Oregon, no, Washington actually first. And I was a history major, had no idea that I was going to take a career that went this way. When I applied for the job, we moved to Oregon, it was just something that I could do while my kids were in school. Keep me busy, and it just segued from there.
You know, as a history major, it kind of just goes to show you that city managers find their way into the business in all sorts of different ways, right? So there's really never a very clear path to the city manager role. But congratulations, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you.
Let me introduce our second panelist, Dean Huard. Has served in the U.S. Army for the past 30 years. He's currently serving as the Executive Officer and Chief of Staff for a field support brigade in Fort Hood, Texas. As the Executive Officer, he's responsible for managing a staff dedicated department of the Army civilians and contractors in an organization comprised of 6,400 personnel throughout 17 states and 2 overseas countries. So it's a huge responsibility and breadth of job that the Dean is responsible for. Dean's got a bachelor's degree in political science with a minor in planning and public policy and management at the University of Oregon. He's also got a master's degree with an emphasis in public administration, and he was honored in 2015 by receiving the Alumni Award from West College for his many years of service and leadership that he has performed with that college. Recently appointed to the City of Nolanville, Texas Planning and Zoning Committee, and he's looking forward to transitioning from the military next year with the hopes of entering city management in order to continue making a contribution to local government. I tell you what, Dean, I really appreciate you joining here the work that you're doing is so parallel to the work that city managers do. And so I really am looking forward to the perspectives that you can share about engagement in a military environment. I just think it's going to be really helpful to hear from you. So thanks for joining us, and would love to hear a little bit more.
I appreciate it, Matt. Again, thanks for having me on the panel. Just for me and my background, I grew up in Southern California. My dad was in the Coast Guard, so we spent some time on the East Coast, West Coast, but went to high school in San Diego, and then his last duty station was in Oregon on the coast, and then decided to follow him up there, spent some time at the community college, and then transferred to the University of Oregon. Came on active duty a little bit later in life. After 9/11, when the towers went down, decided to come on active duty full time. And then from there, I've been on active duty ever since. Had the opportunity to travel to different places like Iraq, Kuwait, Afghanistan over the last 20 years. So, and as indicated in my bio, looking to retire at the end of next year. And ironically, I majored in public administration, or I started out as a major and then went back to political science. So it's funny how life takes you on this road, because now I'm actually looking into going into city management, many years later. So, but I look forward to the opportunity. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. You had just a great career and a varied career. So I really appreciate you being here as well. I'm happy to introduce our third panelist, Dan Singer. Dan is the city manager in Santa Paula, California. Dan's got over 27 years in local government and has served in several other communities in California as well. Dan began his career after receiving his master's degree at the Maxwell School of Citizenship at Syracuse University. Dan's got a strong commitment to the profession, which I was very impressed with, Dan, when I was reading your bio. He serves as a coach and a mentor with the ICMA, International City Managers Association, and the Municipal Management Association, and was a recent board member for the League of Women in Government, which is a great organization. In addition, Dan currently serves on the Cal ICMA Ethics Committee and the New Talent Initiative Task Force, and has written numerous articles aimed at pushing organizations to take risks, think innovatively, and nurture their talent. Dan, thanks for being here, but also thanks for what you've done in the profession. There's a lot of valuable stuff that you're doing on behalf of ICMA and in helping young leaders advance and professional women advance in local government. So thanks for being here and for what you're doing. Love to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Matt. And, I think as you were talking about the career that I've had, I really feel like the public sector chose me more than I chose it. I'm just passionate about really making communities better, but also stretching our organizations to be more innovative and creative so that we're not stagnant. And that's a challenging thing to do in government, right? Because we're bureaucratic by our very structure, and so there's challenges there. But happy to be part of this discussion and looking at how we can continue to engage our communities.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dan. I totally agree with you. I think that sometimes if you're not stretching and you're not attempting to do new things or to learn new practices, you won't. And so I really appreciate the perspective that you take into your job, into your profession. Well, let's jump into it. The topic of the conversation today is the value of community engagement under the American Rescue Plan Act. And while we're focusing a little bit on the what we call the ARPA, it really is about engagement and how you can understand the needs and priorities of your community. COVID has just shifted everybody's priorities over the last year. But if you had a plan in place in 2018, chances are really strong that the priorities and your community needs and the needs of your residents and businesses have shifted around a lot. And so it's really important to understand what those needs are, especially as you now have this influx of federal dollars that is really intended to help you recover from COVID and move your community forward. So it is about understanding the needs of your residents and community so that you can effectively use the use of those funds. The pandemic has created so many challenges for communities, and the discussion today is really around how have you handled it and how have you accomplished engagement in this challenging area. You know, engagement has never been easy. Even before the pandemic struck us, it was always difficult. I always found it frustrating over my 30 years of being a city manager that there would be so many times when the conversation would be run by one person, or it would, you would have more staff people at meetings than you would have residents. And, you know, that's logical. The way that local government is sometimes structured makes it difficult and make natural barriers for people to get engaged in any kind of meaningful way. But then you throw on top of that the pandemic, and in some respects, the pandemic has actually allowed for more participation because of the virtual world that we've evolved into. And so I'm going to be excited to hear about how your virtual experience over the last year has happened, or how successful that has been, and whether or not you'll be continuing in the virtual world going forward, just in order to help address engagement and to build engagement. We do know that engagement levels have increased. Trust in government over the last year has actually increased as well. And I think that just is reflective of the value that local governments have provided to residents as public health issues and economic issues, and just impacts on your personal life have had such an influence on the things that you do. So the question and the conversation is going to be around, how do you have that authentic engagement going on in your communities, and how are you going to be taking advantage of the ARPA funds as you start to prepare for the future? So there are three questions that we're going to be jumping into. The first one is, how are you identifying community needs and priorities that are going to be addressed using the ARPA funds? How does resident input help guide the delivery of public services in the community? And then finally, what strategies and tools are you finding successful for engaging residents? And Dale, I'd like to start with you, if you don't mind. Can you talk about how your community is identifying community needs and priorities as you start to use the ARPA funds?
Well, not only has COVID affected us, the drought currently going on in Oregon has affected us. So because of the restrictions on how the funds can be used, we're going to be using it for water infrastructure to add a new raw water main transmission line into our system.
Dale, excuse me, would you mind moving a little bit closer to your computer a little bit so that your voice is coming through a little bit stronger? Or maybe speak just a little bit louder?
I
think so. Okay. Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
I was saying that with Nehalem, it's also been the drought that is affecting us. So with the restrictions on how the American Rescue Plan's funds are used, we will be using it for infrastructure and putting in a new raw water transmission main. Otherwise, we will be rationing water if this continues.
Yeah, what a significant challenge. Have you had a lot of people, I assume you've been holding public meetings, and have you noticed any shifts in the level of engagement in your community?
Well, because City Hall was closed to the public, except by emergencies and by appointment. Most of our interaction has been over Zoom. We have a significant aging population who are not computer savvy. So a lot of my conversations with them have been over the phone. It's been interesting. They trust us, which is great. We explained the situation. We've had the newspapers put it out there for the public, put out on our website, and they understand that we have an issue with the drought in Oregon right now, and that they understand that our ability to use the funds are restricted to certain projects.
It sounds like just a huge challenge for the community.
Well, and we're a very small community. We only got, including our urban growth boundary, we have almost 2,000 people. So it is a challenge.
Yeah, but having the availability of water is that universal thing that doesn't matter what size community you're in. It's just a critical
and
part of your community life.
Residents completely understand.
Well, I'm glad to hear that the trust factor is high. So thank you. Dean, can you talk about how in your environment you're identifying community needs? I know that you're not directly involved with the ARPA funding aspect, but I'm really interested to learn just about how you go about identifying community needs in projects that you're involved with.
Yeah, sure, not a problem. Yeah, as I mentioned prior, if I could just do just a quick little scene setter when it comes to Fort Hood itself, and maybe some differences between what a city manager does and then what a garrison commander does. So here at Fort Hood, and this is true for any installation, we have a senior mission commander. In our case, it's 3-star general, Lieutenant General White, who's the 3-corps commander, and then below him is a garrison commander who is the equivalent of a city manager. So we work directly with our local community. In our case, the city outside is called Killeen, but then neighboring cities are going to be Nolanville, Harker Heights, and so Fort Hood itself has a huge influence throughout Texas itself. It is, and I just found this out the other day, it's the #1 employer in the state of Texas. So even with Elon Musk coming to town with Tesla and all the businesses moving to Texas, Fort Hood is still the biggest employer in Texas. But as far as identifying the community needs and priorities in our environment, this is very probably not atypical of cities, but the Army is very into what we call boards, bureaus, and cells. So a lot of boards, a lot of working groups, and to get that feedback from the soldier, from civilians, there's a number of them. But first off is what's called the Community Service Council. Community Service Council is a once-a-month meeting where the garrison commander and the 3-corps commander talk about, basically it's an update with all the different services that are offered on Fort Hood, and it's an opportunity to update all the it's online, so it's a town hall format as well. So if residents want to listen in, they can, but this is where they get updates on what's new at the hospital, COVID testing, vaccine testing sites, what's new with activities, training that's going on for families, parenting classes, transition assistance for soldiers that are actually leaving the Army, and then any on-post, off-post committees. And then we have another series of boards that if we're looking for feedback on what facilities projects we should be focusing on, we have what's called a Real Property Planning Board that focuses on, again, all the different projects, capital improvement projects that are happening on the post. Just recently, we found out that we were awarded about $420 million for barracks, which is a big deal for us because we have about 10,000 soldiers that are living in barracks, and so we're always looking to improve the quality of life of soldiers on Fort Hood. And then lastly is our installation planning board, and this is it's a combination of all the other boards and committee meetings that go on in Fort Hood. But it's kind of like with limited experience I have with our city, it's kind of like our comprehensive plan. So once a year, the commanding general and the garrison commander get together with all the different agencies and tenants on Fort Hood and talk about, are we meeting our goals? Are we meeting all the things that we set out to do at the beginning of the year? Are we providing the quality service that we said we wanted to at the beginning of the year? So that's kind of in a nutshell. Again, it's a lot of boards, working groups, but it's bottom up from the soldiers itself, and then there's some what we call commander's guidance intent from the garrison commander and the 3-star general as well.
Dean, do those engagement strategies work very effectively? I mean, do you see a lot of engagement?
I would say there's probably more engagement at the middle management level. So at the senior NCO, middle manager, officer level, you may not see as engagement from the soldiers themselves. But again, the post is making a huge effort to try to reach out to those soldiers because what we realized, and I was going to mention this in the other question as well, is that if you have a happy soldier, if you have a soldier that has a really good place to sleep, good food, then that soldier is more likely going to enlist. So on a post, that's another way for us to ensure that recruiting and retention numbers are met. Is that if we provide a good quality service to that soldier and they receive a good experience, then more than likely that's another way to retain them in the Army.
That's a great perspective. And it so aligns. I'm looking at Dan and Dale. It so aligns with the life of a city manager, right? If
Right.
your residents are happy, they'll invest more,
Right.
and you can move mountains a lot more effectively. Great perspective. Thank you so much, Dan. Can you talk about Santa Paula and how you're identifying community needs and priorities that as you kind of work your way into the ARPA work?
Sure. You know, we didn't have a lot of financial losses. So one of the benefits of the ARPA funds is you can use it to basically replenish those losses. But for us, those losses were a fraction of the monies that we're entitled to use. On the flip side, it's really forced us to be fairly creative and somewhat resourceful because unlike the situation that Dale's in, where, you know, with the drought and everything, the city's got a pretty clear need for, you know, water infrastructure or you know, water issues, or neighboring cities to our community that are heavy tourist cities that were really hammered by COVID are going to just use it to, you know, replenish their reserves because they dipped into their reserves so deep. So, you know, the silver lining for us is our losses weren't great, but on the flip side, now we have this challenge of how do we go about taking this money and spreading it out. And so we have really looked at how can we utilize funds to effectuate the most number of people, and in that process, of course, it is part of the engagement of the community. So we're looking at, you know, small business assistance. We are absolutely going to do some utility bill relief for our water and sewer customers that fell, you know, far behind during the pandemic. Some partnerships. We're doing some work with nonprofits who have been serving the community, whether that's Boys and Girls Club or our homeless shelter or a food pantry, to try and give them some support financially with these funds. And then we're looking at, you know, what can we do to position ourselves better? So we're looking at economic development projects and beautification efforts, some energy efficiency projects. And the challenge we have is making sure that these all qualify. And so we're going through the exercise of combing through the, you know, 150-page guidance to see what's going to work and what won't. And then we'll re-engage our council. We went to our city council fairly early in this process because we knew there wasn't a clear direction and that that our council members were going to want input. They were going to want to know we were engaging with our nonprofits, engaging with our community. And so we did a public workshop. Interestingly, hardly anyone showed up. There was a couple of letters, you know, of support to our approach. But there hasn't been a lot of engagement, except from our grocery store union that says, you know, we should help pay for hazard pay for them. Other than that, it's been difficult really getting a lot of input into how we use these funds.
It sounds like you've got a pretty good engagement network though with your community partners, you know, your nonprofit groups and some of the civic groups. Has that been intentional, or has that just kind of been a natural outcome from just the way that you kind of handle community engagement?
Yeah, so I would say both, because ultimately we of course want to engage with our community, but I have experienced, and I've been here about 2 years now, that it's a fairly apathetic or removed community. Of course, they always are ready to complain when something doesn't go well, right? But as they should. But we have had trouble really with that true notion of engagement. What I have felt though throughout this whole pandemic is that there's been a longing for information. And so what we have seen is dramatic increases in the number of likes and the efforts that we've made to use social media and whatnot to reach out to our community. And that has worked fairly well. And then of course there's feedback, a feedback loop that comes with that engagement. But we definitely went to our nonprofits and said, you guys are kind of the face of the community and we want to be in partnership with you. And that was intentional. That was probably likely to happen just with my leadership and our council's desire, but it was accelerated during the pandemic for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. It does kind of point to the adage of, there's going to be a hot issue that hits your community at some point. And so the best time to start building those relationships and those engagements is when the storm is not there, right? Developing those kind of engagement.
And not to cut you off, but I think, we've all experienced natural disasters or, military man-made disasters, et cetera. And the public has, I think, sometimes an unrealistic expectation of the role of government, right? Well, this disaster has lasted 15 months. So in fact, the role of government has been one of being a partner with the community to make sure that they're getting information, they're getting access to testing, to vaccinations, to help and assistance. And so I think I'm pretty proud of the country in terms of what we've learned in this last year and how we can respond better in the future.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you. Let's shift over to the second question. And Dean, I'd like to start with you. Dean, can you talk about how does community input influence how resident and business needs and military needs are met in your environment?
Sure. And again, not to be redundant from the previous discussion, but for us, that resident/soldier input is really how change is made. There isn't a day that goes by that our Corps commander and or our garrison commander, and matter of fact, you see this every day when you come to the gate. So every day you come through one of many gates on Fort Hood, and this is true for most installations. But what's different about when you come through Fort Hood is you will have a soldier that greets you that says, "Welcome to the great place." And a lot of folks that have been here for a while can get a little cynical and say, well, what makes it the great place? Matter of fact, I asked that question this morning to a soldier when I came through. And so for a young soldier, it makes him think for a second. But living and working at the great place, means that they have good people, they have good facilities, and it's a place that that they can be proud of. So the input that we receive from the soldiers is really what we call it could be a combat force multiplier, or just a force multiplier. So if we don't listen to the residents in the community, then again, we're not going to be able to accomplish our mission. And the more that we demonstrate that we are a caring organization, we are providing facilities and services that they can be proud of. And like I mentioned before, they're going to stay in the Army. They're going to want to continue to serve. They're going to have a good taste in their mouth about even if they leave the service, they're going to have a positive experience about being in the Army, and they're going to tell that to their friends. I think the military is still, if you look at the trust factor in organizations throughout the country, I think the military still rates pretty high because as we saw during COVID, when it was at its peak, we were sending out soldiers to the Javits Center and to different facilities throughout the country to help. So it's important that we get that feedback from the soldiers so that they can continue that message to their friends, family. So there's a legacy of people that want to continue to serve. So I hope that kind of answer. I know it's probably a little redundant from the previous question, but again, the main point is that we need that feedback. and leadership is constantly asking our soldiers and our residents, how they're doing, what makes this the great place? Do you like living here? So thank you.
No, I think that's great, Dean. In fact, I love the way you branded that, the great place. I think this is very, very cool. And it sounds like you're kind of walking the walk as well, in just the work you're doing. And I appreciate how you connect that branding and that message to accomplishing your mission, which is, I think, very parallel for that authentic engagement that communities try to strive for. And because that's what makes it effective.
Matt, on a side note too, I had a conversation with the deputy garrison commander not too long ago, where we are, like I said at the beginning, we're the largest employer in the state of Texas. But if you drive an hour south to downtown Austin, they may not know what exactly the great place is. So there is some messaging that has to continue in order to let folks outside of our 10-mile radius just what we do for the state of Texas and for the country as a whole, because the only time a lot of folks will hear about us is when our tanks and our field artillery are going off, and then they usually complain to someone that they know that's in the military, hey, what's going on at Fort Hood? And it's we just tell them it's training, just like when you hear a fighter jet going overhead at an air base. So again, I think there's some work to do when it comes to messaging north to Waco, Dallas, and then down to Austin. But we'll continue to do that.
No, that's great. I really appreciate that. I always thought the great place was Minnesota. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's more of a great place in Minnesota than Texas sometimes, but I guess it just depends on where you sit. So,
thank you. Dan, can you talk about how community input influences how residents and businesses' needs are met in your community?
Yeah, I think the advantage of being in a smaller town, where a population of about 30,000, I don't think quite as small as Dale's, but I've been city manager in a town of 8,000 up to 50,000, and there's such a comfortable opportunity to engage with our citizens and our residents and business. We really rely on. I'm sorry for that phone background there. We really rely on the partnerships you and I were talking about earlier in receiving feedback. So our Chamber of Commerce and an arts council that represents a lot of the museums and cultural activities. Some of our nonprofits that serve our large Latino population, our school district, those kinds of groups that also represent a source of outreach to residents and constituents. And so, because we know we can only be so effective, we've kind of relied on those partnerships and meet regularly with them. I think that one thing that I've seen change, and it was bound to change just as a result of social media and all of the challenges that come with that, is that during this pandemic, as I was saying earlier, we really saw that longing for information. And so our elected officials, especially because they were, forced to stay in for a good bit of the year and not be at the kind of social settings or events that the council would normally be at, and therefore engaging with our, residents, the kind of the monitoring of social media comments and activities was something we ended up paying more attention to. I think a lot of our council brought things to my attention and to our staff's attention as a result of seeing things on various social media outlets, including Nextdoor and Facebook. We have a couple of Facebook groups in our town. One's called, Growing Up in Santa Paula. The other's called Let's Talk Santa Paula. And oftentimes there'll be a lot of chatter on those groups. Hey, what's going on with all the potholes, or or that type of thing. And so our council would often kind of flag some of that and bring that to our attention. So, that's not the way we normally would operate, but I think with COVID that we've kind of morphed into relying a little bit more on some of those both constructive and critical comments that you often see floating out there in cyberspace.
Yeah, sure. Did you, with any kind of strategic planning process this last year, did you notice any shift, or do you intentionally engage with the community on helping to shape any of your plans?
Yeah, I mean, our council just finished a upcoming 2-year strategic plan, and they have absolutely emphasized the need to kind of better understand how we can do engagement. In fact, my management analyst is signed up for a summer course on community engagement this coming summer, this July and August. And I don't know that we would have done that if the council hadn't have said in the strategic planning workshops that this was important to them. So
that's great to hear. Yeah, thank you. Dale, with all of your challenges that are going on in your community, and I'm thinking now of your infrastructure, can you talk about how the community input influences meeting those needs or your business needs in your community?
Sure. One of the things, we were quite lucky in December of 2019, we finished.
Dale, I'm sorry. Dale, I'm sorry. Your voice is so soft, and I want to make sure that you're coming across as the main picture in this.
Try to be a little louder here.
There you go. That's better. Now you're good.
One of the things, we were very lucky in December of 2019, we finished our comprehensive plan review, which encompassed several community visioning meetings that were well attended by the public. And then COVID hit, but we had a whole game plan in front of us that we needed to follow. We've been very involved with the surrounding communities, the community of Manzanita and Wheeler, where the three of us are now doing a regional transportation management plan, which will again be using community visioning programs. Unfortunately, there'll be a lot of more Zooming than there ever was before. But we were lucky to have that whole comprehensive plan just redone before this hit. And we talked about, the community was very interested in how we creating more recreational opportunities on our river, the parks in the community. We had a game plan actually of what the community was really interested in. And we've been following that and keeping the community advised and involved.
Are you, Dale, I'm just kind of curious, do you do a lot of regional work, and do you anticipate doing more regional collaboration with service delivery?
We do some, like our garbage franchises and the public utility franchises. The three cities pretty much do the same one. In fact, we, the city managers, take turns putting them together. I just finished my turn. But we do a regional collaboration. The city of Manzanita is much more focused on tourism. That's their bread and butter. Wheeler and Nehalem, not so much. We are more of a type of a bedroom community where people actually live instead of having second homes. So and our tsunami preparations, because of where we live, all involved with each other. This is the other three cities, including all of our emergency operation plans.
Yeah, even as a small community, you've got some huge responsibilities.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. Do you have a lot in your strategic planning process? Did you have a lot of people engaged in that effort?
Yes. Our planning commission, and then the Emergency Volunteer Corps, which is a volunteer group in the area that's a nonprofit, and has actually been used as a boilerplate model for other volunteer groups across the country.
Well, that's great. Thank you. I'll go on to the third question, and Dan, I'd like to start with you on this one. Dan, can you talk about the strategies and tools that you're finding successful for engaging residents and tracking performance? And if I could just add on a little bit of additional one of the areas that is becoming more and more relevant is just how do you reach those hard to reach populations? So if you have any tips that you can share about what you're finding successful, I'd appreciate you sharing that.
Sure. I do have some tips, but I have to give our county the full credit for that. You know, on the heels of the U.S. Census process, our county and region undertook some comprehensive outreach efforts to reach those very hard to reach populations, right? So that we could get an accurate census count because of the value that brings to future funding and proper representation. And so that was a very grassroots and intentional process. The county put a couple $1 million into distributing money to a network of nonprofits who applied to help with that, what they called the complete count process. So it went very well. You had, you know, anything from, you know, religious organizations, nonprofits, NGOs, chambers and whatnot, helping to basically count in the community. So smartly, the county just about month and a half ago said, why don't we re-engage all those groups that were helping us with the complete count effort and turn it into what they're calling a complete reach effort, to reach out to constituents, to help them understand the importance of vaccination, the access to it, you know, the fact that it's free and all of those types of things. And so we have a handful now of groups in Santa Paula and other communities in our county do as well that are engaging in that extra outreach. And so we actually have a meeting, a kickoff meeting this afternoon with those groups to talk about how we're making sure we're not at cross purposes, making sure the city is able to support them, especially if they're wanting to use city facilities or using our kind of our media outlets as a way to get their word out. And so I feel it was fortuitous that effort existed, and I realize that might not be a model that exists everywhere. But what I would say is that those groups were highly effective. There was no way as a government entity we could have reached out to those groups, whether it was, you know, the fixed income seniors that didn't have a lot of computer access or social media, you know, presence, whether it was a language barrier, a cultural issue, or people were just so busy with their lives and don't even think or know how to pay attention to government. I think that network really helped. And so I think the takeaway is, you know, go to your civic organizations, go to your religious organizations, go to your nonprofits, your service groups, and make sure that they're kind of an outlet for the messaging that we try and do at the local level.
That's outstanding. Congratulations. I think that's just a very creative and worthwhile endeavor. I wish you the best of luck on that, because why give up on those connections that you've already made and take advantage of those relationships that have already been built.
Yeah.
That's
I applaud the county for thinking creatively, and then for putting some of their ARPA money behind, you know, paying these groups to go. Yeah. No one was expecting it would happen for free. And so in some ways, it's also a small kind of employment act for those nonprofits to get a little extra money to reach out to these hard to reach groups.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Just on a more local level, as you start to think about how you go about tracking your performance, what kind of strategies or tools do you use for that?
Well, we're not great at doing that. In fact, I think we all could take a page out of the military's book, in that, you know, at the local government level, we're so busy with just executing the services we deliver that we forget to pause and then, you know, kind of do that reconnaissance. Dean can talk about, you know, how after a mission, everyone comes together and they look back and say, what worked? What could we have done differently? What was successful here and what needs to be improved next time? And so I don't have a lot of good examples of how we've done that successfully, but I do think it's something that we need to make time for. We need to be more intentional about, just like the military does. It's built into that structure and into that culture.
Hey, Matt, can I make a quick follow-up on that?
Yep.
So, so it's interesting because I was just having this very same thought with my son's baseball coach, because it's very simple. It's called an AAR. It's an after-action review, and really it doesn't have to be a high-level, joint forces military operation to do an AAR. You can use it from a baseball team after winning or losing a game, up to the highest levels of operations. But again, just very simple: what went right, what went wrong, and what are the steps you're going to take to improve. But I think that it's so important in any operation to find out, or after a big event, especially with what's happened with COVID, that you do take the time to pause, as Dan said, and find out how to do better, because you never know, the next COVID strain or some type of emergency could be just around the corner.
Yeah. Dan, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. But Dean, let's just kind of shift over to you. As long as you were kind of getting going on talking about that, can you talk about some of the other tools and strategies that your environment is using for? You've talked about them a little bit earlier, but I'd love for you just to kind of capture them again on how you get that resident input and track your performance.
Yeah, again, thanks for the question. I'm going to look at this as both on post, off post. Even though our entire supported population is about 506,000 personnel, military, civilian, retirees, but on post is about 36,000. But as far as our on post, I think the Army does a really good job and this is probably true for most military organizations, it's face-to-face conversation. It's leader-led discussions, getting that feedback from residents, from the civilian population, but especially when it comes to soldiers, is that it's a very simple huddle with your soldiers, and obviously it's not the general at top that's meeting with everybody. He's obviously meeting, he or she are meeting with their leaders, but that's how we get a lot of resident feedback. I think from a soldier perspective is just having having those face-to-face conversations. Trying to do it as much as we could during COVID, but even on the installation, Fort Hood was practically completely shut down. We were mission essential for a good couple of months there. So and then we had to rely on, just like everybody else, all the different virtual social media outlets. Teams became very popular. We're not using Zoom, but we are using MS Teams a lot. And then off post, we use the typical social media outlets to get in contact with our residents, our soldiers. IMCOM, which is our higher headquarters, has what's called a digital garrison app. And admittedly, when I've talked to other city managers throughout the country, it's not what other cities can do, like reporting potholes and things like that have to be acted on right away. But this digital garrison app just gives you all the information you need for Fort Hood. Very simple, basic activities, weather, and then shopping, things like that. And then as far as engaging residents and tracking performance, the military has what's called ICE. ICE is the Interactive Customer Evaluation System. It's an online system. Basically, it's a feedback mechanism that you can put online any type of positive, negative comment for anything that's happening on the installation. And we really encourage our employees to use ICE and to have them push that message to their customers. so that we can, and we actually make that a part of their evaluations. I'm very big on, tell me what happened that was good, because if you think that you're a 5, which is outstanding in the civilian evaluation system, show me those ICE comments. Tell me, why everyone thinks that you're wonderful and all the good things that you did. And so we have 24 hours to respond to those. And again, it's the primary means that MCOM uses to get that feedback. And then last year, this is worldwide, because MCOM has installations all over the world. There were 409,000 customer comments on ICE. Over 362,000 of those customers responded that they were satisfied, which is a 93% overall customer satisfaction rate, which is great. And of those, they had a complaint and provided contact information. MCOM responded to 81% in 3 days. So the Army military is very big on metrics, and it's important that we're responding in the right amount of time.
Wow, that's just excellent, Dean. I really appreciate even more having you part of this panel, so that folks can gain the value of your experience and the structure of the way that you're engaging with your military and residents that are on and off the campus. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Dale, can you talk a little bit about the strategies and tools that you're using for engaging residents and tracking your performance?
I guess if I'm not hearing complaints, I think I'm doing well. So, but mainly, it's interesting in a small town. You have the people that gather in your churches, the people that might gather in the bar, and the people that might gather on the pickleball court. And then you usually hear from one of those people, well, so-and-so is complaining about this, or I've heard some complaints about that. And that's usually how pretty much we get our information about whether people are happy or unhappy, and we follow them up. And we also are very transparent with our minutes and everything posted online. Agendas are online. We notify people. They can take a look. Everything's right there in black and white. They can look at them on the computer screen. If they don't have a computer, we're happy to print them out for them. So we pay attention to what people are saying. And if I'm not hearing complaints, I'm happy, because I'm thinking they're happy.
Well, that's interesting. And you're right. Those personal connections on all of your daily activities are great ways to just learn about what the word on the street is. Now that I'm working at home, I spend a lot of time at coffee shops, and I intentionally listen in on conversations that are going on around the restaurant. And it strikes me, it's amazing to me how frequently they are talking about something going on in the community. It's either relating to a public safety issue, an infrastructure question. I'm certain in your community, a lot of people are having strong conversations and important conversations around your water issues and your infrastructure needs in the drought. And so those kind of personal connections in a small town, I think, are just really, really valuable. And
different in a small town than from the larger town. We're a microcosm of a bigger city, and
right.
because they feel very free to walk up to me in the grocery store and tell me something that they don't like or that they like, there's a little difference there.
Yeah, that is so true. Well, I'm impressed by the importance of all of the critical issues that you're confronting, and I'm hoping that this ARPA process will allow you to address some of those really critical needs in your community. And my guess is that you'll probably be working on a regional scale on a lot of those issues.
Yes, we do. I forgot to mention that our search and rescue, our fire and rescue, is also regional. It incorporates all 3 cities. So we work together on a lot of things. And unfortunately, right now, the other 2 cities are engaged in some very heavy issues in their community, and I'm just as happy to sit back and think I'm happy my community is out of them.
Well, thank you so much, Dale. Do any of you have kind of final thoughts or comments or additional points that you want to make sure are brought up or questions for each other? Great. Well, I tell you what, let's kind of move on. Thank you for all of your questions. I just really appreciate.
To Dean.
Go ahead.
My husband was stationed at Fort Hood.
Oh, no kidding.
In the 60s.
Oh, wow.
Has always had nothing but great things to say about it.
Oh my gosh, that's too ironic. Yeah. Okay, great.
That's why they call it the great place.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. Come back to the great place.
Well, listen, thank all of you for your comments and your perspectives. This has been a really helpful discussion. Indeed, I'm particularly happy that you were able to join this. All of you are in different stages of kind of planning for the ARPA money, and with some big issues that are in front of you already. I really appreciate, Dan, the perspective that you shared on how the county is going to be using it for the continuation of the census workers on reaching out to this hard to reach population. So really thank you for sharing that, because that'll be really a helpful tip that other communities will really benefit from. And Dale, with your drought and infrastructure issues, I just wish you the best of luck with bringing in all the appropriate players for engaging on such an important topic. All of you have shared those interrelationships and those personal connections and the value that social media has played on providing information and allowing people the opportunity to get data and to give their perspectives. Dean, it is impressive to learn and hear about how the military has structured their engagement practices to help ensure that people's voices are being heard. Your response rate to that citizen feedback is really impressive, particularly given the scale of the numbers that you're receiving. So congratulations on that, and thank you for sharing that. And all of you are tracking performance in a different way. And I've always, over my 30 years of experience as a manager, I always have appreciated that it's always a work in progress. You can always do more, and you always can do better, and taking advantage of the tools that are out there and the different techniques for garnering input so that you understand how your performance is doing. So thank you for all of those thoughts. I'm going to follow up this session. I'll get you all the contact information for each other so you can connect with each other if you like. I do these conversations every week, and so I would welcome you to connect with other people who might have an interest in participating. Would love to get their names and get them scheduled to be part of a panel conversation down the road. We will package up highlight segments of your comments, and you'll see them published on LinkedIn. And we would just ask that you share them with your LinkedIn networks. The value of this is that people get the opportunity to see and hear and learn, and particularly those folks who trust and look to you for information and ideas. That it becomes a really valuable resource for them. So thank you for that. And then I'm going to follow up and connect with all of you, because I'd love to just get some feedback from all of you on just what should I be doing differently? How can I improve this? I call it my ARR. What worked out well, what didn't work out well. How can we continue to improve these panel conversations? Because I do think it's a meaningful way for sharing ideas and perspectives and things that are working well in communities that other communities can benefit from. But the greatest value is just getting a chance to meet all of you. And Dale, I wish you well in your retirement.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Joy.
And Dean, same to you. Best of luck as you enter into the city management world at some point. And by all means, reach out. ICMA is a great resource for you. I'm happy to share and help you however I can. And Dan, thank you for all of the commitment that you have done in the profession. I really, really value the work that you do with young leaders. And so thank you for that.
Thanks.
And we've been able to keep it pretty close to an hour. So our time is up, and I just want to thank you again for being part of this, and I'll look forward to staying in connection with you.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate the
Thanks,
conversation.
Matt. Appreciate it.
Hey, just one more point, and this is more for Dale and Dan. We don't use these panel conversations as an opportunity to promote the tools that we use. We do have a partnership, though, with ICMA and NLC around the ARPA funds, and we've actually developed an ARPA package. We have a webinar that's actually scheduled in a couple of hours, 2 p.m. Central, that you're welcome to participate in. It really is designed to help you get your own an index of community needs and things that might benefit you as you kind of continue through this ARPA process. I just bring it up just so that you know about it. I know, Dan, I think you had some conflicts going on this afternoon, but there'll be other ones coming down the road. If you hop on, if you go to the Polko site and you do a little exploration, you can find it. If you register, we will send you the recording of the webinar if you're interested.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Great.
Thank you very much. Nice meeting all of you.
Take care,
Bye,
you guys.
everybody.